The late afternoon sun hung low over Jackson Heights, Louisiana, casting long golden shadows across the cracked sidewalks. Mara Bennett moved through the streets with an unshaken presence, the kind that comes from years of discipline, of knowing exactly who you are. Her deep brown eyes scanned the neighborhood, familiar and yet distant, like a childhood home left untouched for too long. She hadn't set foot here in years. Not since she retired. Not since she buried her husband. It was strange how little had changed. The same corner store still had the peeling 2-for-1 sodas sign taped to its window. The old barber shop still had the same faded red and white striped pole turning slowly in front. The basketball court where kids played like their lives depended on it was still cracked at the edges but alive with energy. The laughter, the voices, the smell of fried catfish drifting out of Mama Dell's cafe. It wrapped around her, pulling her back into memories she hadn't let herself feel in a long time. She adjusted the canvas tote slung over her shoulder. She wasn't wearing anything special. Just a loose button-down shirt, sturdy cargo slacks, and comfortable walking shoes. But even dressed casually, she carried herself differently. Shoulders squared, chin level, steps measured. It wasn't something she could turn off. Her husband used to call it her warrior's posture. She smiled faintly at the thought. He would have been proud. As she passed a group of teenage boys huddled outside the corner store, one of them, maybe 16, looked up, did a quick double take, and then gave a respectful nod. "You military?" he asked. Mara paused, meeting his gaze. There was something in his eyes, recognition, maybe respect. "Something like that," she answered. The boy grinned. "Figured. My uncle was in the Marines. Walks like you." Before she could reply, one of his friends called him inside, and just like that, he was gone. She exhaled slowly. Moments like that reminded her why she fought, why she endured. She'd spent years in places most people only saw on television documentaries. Vietnam, Kuwait, Afghanistan. She had led teams through the dead of night, through chaos and enemy fire, through deserts that swallowed sound and light. And now, here she was, back home, walking streets that felt both familiar and foreign. She had spent her 20s at war, her 30s trying to heal, her 40s and 50s training the next generation. Now, at 71, she wasn't sure what home even meant anymore. A patrol car crept up beside her, its slow crawl out of place in a neighborhood where cops usually sped by without a second glance. She kept walking, pretending not to notice. But she knew the drill. The window rolled down. "Excuse me, ma'am," came the voice. Gruff, practiced. She stopped, turned slightly. Saw him. Officer Traviston, mid-40s, crew cut, thick arms, and the kind of smirk that told her he enjoyed this a little too much. His mirrored sunglasses hid his eyes, but she could feel them on her, scanning her, judging her. "Mind telling me what you're doing around here?" he asked. Mara stared at him for a beat, her expression unreadable. She had encountered men like him before, men who saw a confident black woman and mistook it for a challenge. She shifted the strap of her tote. "Just walking." "Where to?" She arched an eyebrow. "Didn't realize I needed an itinerary to walk down my own street." Didn't like that. His smirk faded just a little. "We've had some break-ins around here," he said. "Got to make sure everything's in order." Mara held his gaze, unfazed. "You see me breaking into something?" Silence. A muscle in his jaw twitched. He leaned against the open window, exhaling through his nose. "Just doing my job." Mara exhaled quietly, resisting the urge to shake her head. "Well," she said, "I'm just walking." She could feel the weight of the moment shifting. Denton wasn't looking for a conversation. He was looking for control. And something about her, whether it was her presence or the way she refused to shrink, wasn't sitting right with him. She had two choices, keep engaging or walk away. But before she could decide, Denton put the car in park. "Hold on a second," he said. "Let's see some ID." Mara didn't move. She had been trained to assess threats, surroundings, exits. Right now, she wasn't just assessing a man in uniform. She was assessing a man getting too comfortable with pushing his authority. But she already knew one thing. This wasn't over. The street was quiet, save for the distant hum of traffic and the occasional chatter from nearby stores. But in this moment, none of that mattered. The tension between Mara and Officer Denton hung in the air like a storm waiting to break. "ID," Denton repeated. This time, less patience. Mara reached slowly into her pocket, pulled out her retired military ID, held it up, but didn't hand it over. Denton squinted at it, then back at her. "Military, huh?" His tone was unreadable. Mara had met men like him before, the kind who looked at her and decided that the uniform wasn't enough. The rank wasn't enough. "Where exactly did you serve?" he asked. "I don't answer unnecessary questions," she replied calmly. Denton exhaled hard through his nose. His lips pressed together. "That's so." And then he snatched the ID from her hand before she could react, flipping it over between his fingers. "Lieutenant Mara Bennett. Retired," he said, dragging out the words like they were a joke. "That's cute." A flicker of heat passed through Mara's chest. Not anger. Annoyance. The same kind she'd felt 100 times before in rooms full of men who assumed she didn't belong. "Return it," she said, her voice steady. Denton studied her, tilting his head slightly, like he was deciding whether she was worth the trouble. "You sure this isn't fake?" Mara almost smiled. "Run it through your system," she said flatly. "You'll find out soon enough." But that wasn't what Denton wanted. He wanted a reaction. He turned the card over again, his lips curling like he had already decided she was lying. "You expect me to believe you've been out there, fighting for this country?" His voice dripped with skepticism, like the idea was laughable. Mara didn't answer right away. She didn't need to. Instead, she just watched him calm still. The measured stillness in her expression was a stark contrast to the tension winding its way through the moment. A shift. A small one. But Mara caught it. The people watching. Their curiosity was changing. It wasn't just a traffic stop anymore. It was something else now. They felt the imbalance of power. The wrongness of it. A young woman stood on the sidewalk, phone in hand, recording. She wasn't hiding it. She wanted Denton to see. And he did. His shoulders squared. His stance shifted, tightening like a spring. His grip on Mara's ID firmed. His nostrils flared. "You got a problem?" he asked the woman with the phone. His voice edged with irritation. She didn't answer, just kept recording. Mara smirked, just a little. Denton was the one under a microscope now. "I don't appreciate people trying to make a show out of me," Denton muttered. "Me doing my job." Mara tilted her head slightly, amused. "Then stop putting on a show," she said. For a second, just a flicker, his expression darkened. His jaw clenched. His eyes burned with something ugly. Frustration, anger, or maybe fear. Fear of losing control. And then he stepped closer, just an inch. But it was enough. A deliberate move. A challenge. Mara didn't blink. She didn't move. She'd seen this before. A man like Denton wasn't about law. He was about control. And he was losing it. She heard the murmur from the growing crowd. Shifting bodies. People watching. Some with phones. Some just frozen. Denton made his choice. His hand dropped to his belt. And that was his last mistake. Mara saw the movement before he even committed to it. Before he fully realized the weight of what he was about to do. His fingers brushed the handle of his baton. Maybe that was all he intended. Maybe not. It didn't matter. Mara was already moving. She wasn't thinking about what he meant to do. She was reacting to what he could do. Her body coiled like a whip. Her stance shifted. The moment his fingertips touched his belt, she struck. Her left hand shot forward, seizing his wrist, twisting it with practiced precision. Not hard enough to break it, but enough to make his fingers loosen. A sharp gasp erupted from the crowd. Denton's eyes went wide. His mouth parted in shock. Mara stepped in. Her right foot swept behind his. She yanked forward. The motion was clean, efficient. Denton lost his balance before he realized what was happening. His body hit the pavement with a dull, unforgiving thud. His baton clattered beside him. Useless. For a second, the world held its breath. Mara crouched beside him, voice low. "Steady. Don't ever put your hand on your belt with me again." Denton's face flushed red. Humiliation. Rage. He opened his mouth. But whatever he meant to say was drowned out by the crowd's reaction. People weren't just watching anymore. They had picked a side, and it wasn't his.